What if I told you fantasy football was never really about football? That behind every draft pick, every waiver wire claim, every questionable player status, there was something deeper. It began in 2006, a simpler time, when Tom Brady had only 3 rings, when the iPhone had yet to make its debut, and when Justin Timberlake released his hit single, Sexy Back. They were a motley crew of friends and siblings. The rude dudes with Tudes weren't here to play nice. They were here to dominate, or at least talk like they were going to. There was Cam, notorious for showing up to the inaugural draft with no magazine, claiming he knew most of the players.
Yeah, so I was a little inexperienced at the whole fantasy football thing, having never done one before. And so leading up to it, I thought, I watch football. I know who the players are, assuming that was going to be enough to get me through, hundreds of draft picks. So didn't buy a magazine, didn't do any online research, just showed up figuring, I know who the good players are, I'll just pick them. And then sat down and looked around, and everyone else in the room had notes and magazines and everything. And I think, did I borrow one right away? I'm pretty sure I had to borrow somebody's magazine to get me through, because I quickly realized after about 2 rounds I didn't know anybody's name after that. So it was a little bad start on my part.
There was Christian, who has a strange obsession with Joe Juravicious. There was Dave, forever cursed by the quarterback position.
Well, the QB curse, it seemed like whoever I either drafted or picked up, thinking they were going to be a good quarterback, ended up either getting injured or just had the most terrible season of their career. As far as the injuries, I think I'm known as the person who ended careers. Very first year I selected Sean Alexander, and he got injured and never played again. Plaxico Barris I had 1 year. He shot himself in the leg, so he was out. Maybe the one that bugged me the most was I pulled off a trade with Dirk and got Aaron Rodgers, thinking that was a big coup. And the very next game, he got injured and was out for the rest of the season. So I ended many people's careers and had a good run.
There was Brandon, who absolutely loves tight ends. There was Dustin. Didn't work out in the end. We had to let him go. He sucked. There was Dirk, who took a 3-year hiatus from the league and then was asked if he would like to return to prove his dominance.
It was an honor. It was an honor. I'll say that first. And an unexpected honor. It caught me unawares. I had been on sort of a pilgrimage, a sojourn away from fantasy for a number of seasons, and I thought, am I still good enough? Can I take a team to the championship game again? And I think I proved that I have not yet, but that it is possible. I still aspire to another win. I won 2 championships early in my career, but I think at this point, my last win was maybe in like 2011, or well, that was maybe my first. I can't. It was so long ago I can't even remember the last time that I did well. But I kind of feel like I have something to prove.
I'm hungry.
There was Joey, who is still working to decide a team name. There was Jen, who ends up with the best draft and then ends up with the first overall pick the following year. There was Derek, who will wake up at 3 a.m. on Wednesday mornings to get first dibs on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I discovered pretty early on that the waiver wire opened early in the morning on Wednesday mornings, allowing me to pick up decent free agents. And I've been doing it for so many years that I don't need to set an alarm anymore. I automatically wake up at 3 a.m. every single morning.
There was Ashley, who bases her team name off of some loser who failed her the year before. There was Devin, the commissioner and creator of Tudes with Tudes, after one idea turned into 20 years of unfiltered competition.
I first started dabbling in fantasy football when I was in college, just joining random Yahoo leagues for fantasy basketball and whatever in the early 2000s. And I knew I wanted to do something more, and I had these ideas percolating, but I needed somebody to be interested in doing it with me. So I remember anytime I had an idea, a fun idea, I tended to go to Dirk with that idea. So I'll never forget, I don't know if Dirk remembers this, but we went to a Panera, the Montgomeryville Panera, and talked about maybe we should do this fantasy football league, and it could be fun and we'll make it stupid. And on the spot we named it Tudes with Tudes, for whatever stupid reason. And that ended up just being the thing, and then we started to drag in a few people who would be part of that. And that's, it was always fun but serious, and I never thought we'd be doing it 20 years later. But even when we decided we were going to do the trophy, I'm sure you've probably noticed, but the front plaque is not a quarterback or some guy doing the Heisman pose, it's a punter. So that kind of just speaks to just how Dirk and I always did everything. So.
There have certainly been many highlights over the years, including Dave taking home his first championship with the smallest margin of victory ever recorded.
1/100th of a point, 0.01. But when the day ended, I was ahead by 3.51. And then the few days the following week, they did the, stat corrections, and I lost 3.5 points for, I forget what for, but I still ended up with a 0.01 victory. And that was the best.
Cam has certainly enjoyed looking back on his back-to-back championship wins in 2007 and 2008.
Obviously that felt pretty good, winning my first championship. Going into that second year, it was Tom Brady was my main quarterback, and I had drafted as a backup a still kind of unknown Aaron Rodgers at that point. And after, I think it was week one, third quarter of week one, and Brady, that was when he broke his leg and was going to be out for the rest of the season. So at that point I figured there's no chance, repeat is out the window. And then Aaron Rodgers turned out to be, Brett Favre had moved on, and he turned out to be amazing. And so won my second one that year, thinking I had no shot at it. And that held up for quite a long time, I think, the back-to-back championship. So it was my last championship, but it was something I could always brag about.
I'll probably always remember there was one particular draft where we were in the basement of my parents' old house, and I think it was Brandon's turn to draft. And he spilled his peanuts and chips all over, and panicked and was like, Sean Merriman and the Jacksonville defense or something like that, because he had back-to-back picks, and it was rounds and rounds before any defense or defensive player were drafted. And afterwards, I think he admitted, he was just like, I don't know, I panicked, I don't know what came over me.
I think my favorite story, and there's a lot of funny things that happened mostly around the draft. A lot of them seem to include Brandon for whatever reason. Brandon ends up doing something funny in almost every draft. But my favorite, I think, was when he went through that time period. I don't remember how many times he had to do it, but he was in Indiana. He wasn't going to be home in PA for the draft, so of course we still had our draft order, and we put the phone in Brandon's seat and just put it on a speakerphone. And it was not a good connection. so it would cut out. And the one time, Brandon starts saying something, so we always have to be real quiet to hear what's Brandon trying to say. And he said something to the effect, and this was pre Jessica, but he said, "Oh, hey, hang on, my fiance just came in," and we're all like, "We didn't even know you were dating anybody, and you have a fiance." But apparently, it cut out one key word. My roommate's fiance just came in, so that was. We were all just kind of looking at each other. Did he say what I think he said? And that was probably right around the time he drafted Sean Merriman too. So it was really just the perfect storm of things. So that's my favorite.
I always remember when Dad drafted Quentin Jammer, who was always Cameron's defensive pick. And he did it so casually. He goes, Quentin Jammer, and then goes back, and throughout the room there was kind of a collective, ooh. I remember as everybody realized what had happened. I know those were both draft ones, but the draft is always the hallmark of the league, I feel like. Those are pretty good moments.
One of the toughest memories for me was back in 2015. We arrived on draft day, and I was struggling to figure out who my keeper should be. And I chose to keep Jordy Nelson. And about an hour into the draft, I got an alert that Jordy Nelson had torn his ACL in a preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers and was out for the season. And I knew it was going to be an uphill battle for me for the rest of the year.
For 2 decades, life changed. Jobs, moves, weddings, kids. But Sunday Trash Talk, that stayed the same. Because fantasy football wasn't just a game. It was tradition. It was therapy. It was building lifelong friendships.